Hello and welcome to the F1 Rolling Start podcast with James and
Ben. How are you, folks?
Where we are going to be talking all about the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, which honestly
Was
changed
nuts.
everything for the remainder of the season.
Oh, it was. We were talking about this before the show. If one of the things happened, and that was all that happened this weekend, like, I don't know, qualifying suddenly being on a Sunday because Saturday was rained out, and then it was nuts. If that was the only thing that happened, we'd be like, what a crazy weekend. Or if, I don't know, Max coming from P17 to P1 was the only thing that happened, it would be crazy. But
or the Nepo baby spinning out on the formation lap, or Hulkenberg getting disqualified because marshals were pushing his car, or challenging weather conditions, or Alpine's unexpected double podium. It was an insane race weekend. I literally was sitting there going, what is happening right now?
It was as if the F1 gods were like, not interesting enough. Do this instead. Or like throwing every crazy corkscrew they could into the weekend. And it was just sensory overload. There was so much happening.
I mean, we had
almost
five red flags. So we equaled for the most red flags during a qualifying session. And we thought that was enough.
Yeah, that should be enough.
And then we get into the race and it was just pandemonium. Like it was
insane.
Absolutely out of control. It was a roller coaster of emotions for many drivers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this for a second. In qualifying, this was the first qualifying weekend where Max and Hamilton, in the entire history of them racing at the same race, failed to make it into Q3 together.
Yeah.
It was the only time that's ever happened in their history of racing. Like,
yes.
I mean, it was almost too much. My heart couldn't take it. Had so many feelings about Alpine.
Oh my God.
Being on the podium, which, that's a whole other type of thing. But it was probably the most insane race weekend in the entire history of me being an F1 fan. I can't think of a race weekend that was this insane.
It was pretty wild. We've had some crazy races in the past. I mean, even at Brazil, Hamilton came from all the way at the back of the pack after a bunch of penalties and won the race. So it would have been enough if Max had come from the back and won the race, but it was nuts. I mean, Max himself said it's been a wild roller coaster. He goes from qualifying wanting to tear the garage apart.
Oh, he was
literally
furious.
He was like, I wanted to tear the garage apart, to I'm just ecstatic for winning this race.
First time he's won since Spain.
It's almost like we had that period of time where the safety car just never came out. And it was just pulling the arrow back and just creating all of the F1 tension possible.
Made up for it this weekend.
F1 just blew its load at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Dude,
it was out of control.
Yeah, it was an incredible weekend. You and I were texting. You were a little bit ahead in the race. And so you were like, oh my God, like, are you done? Like, I thought like something crazy happened. Like
I was aggressive. I was aggressive texting you like a high school girlfriend in all capital letters.
I was like, what, does Max go off and Lando like comes through and wins? Like, and then I was like,
no, worse. Ocon comes in second.
I was like, why is Alpine back in the midfield after they clearly don't deserve it? But yeah, it was incredible.
Goodness.
It was incredible. I mean, what other sport can you have these massive swings and changes in fortune literally in a single weekend?
There's no greater sport on the face of this earth than Formula One. But before we jump into the team by team breakdown, Ben, I do have to ask you a question. I watched the Formula One race on F1 TV. Shout out to the F1.com TV subscription. You guys are awesome. I can access the pre-show. I get me some Will Buxton without Drive to Survive.
Miss some Will Buxton.
I get a Ruth Buxton Divey as like she's like kind of like the race engineer.
Wait,
on the international feed they have what's the Bernie? Is it Bernie? Is she the ex-race engineer for Aston Martin.
Yeah.
I have an ex Ferrari and Alfa Romeo girl. She's awesome.
Is she related to Buxton?
I don't think she's related to her.
Oh, same last name?
No, same. Yeah, Bucks. I don't know her real last name.
Okay.
Let's just not get into the details.
We won't.
But if I say it fast and confident, then it seems right. I have like Indy drivers, Lawrence Barretto, who's hilarious.
He's great.
And great. There's a bunch of great people. And Jolyon Palmer, an ex F1 driver.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't get Nico Rosberg.
I don't get
Nico Rosberg.
You don't get Teddy.
I don't get Ted.
Teddy's notebook.
But you know what I also don't get is commercials.
So we were talking about this before the show, and I said I was going to go off on this for a second. I'm usually the more chill one on this podcast. You know,
what?
I don't really try to go off on stuff too hard, but I'm watching F1 now. We've talked ad nauseum about how America has shown up to F1, and F1 has changed. It has.
100%.
And it has changed in large part due to the fact that it has this huge American audience now. And most of the change has been good. Most of the change has been great. Like Drive to Survive, come on. I mean, there's really no other show about sports that's at that level, besides like a 30 for 30, but 30 for 30s are one-off documentaries.
But you know, Drive to Survive is epic and once in a generation type of thing because everyone now is trying to copy it. And none of it seems to be picking up as much speed as Drive to Survive
thing. I'm like,
the
well,
golf
I'm not going to watch
thing, even the motorcycle racing.
Well, like there's tennis, but no,
please.
F1 Drive to Survive is phenomenal. So most of the impact America's had on F1's been great. However, today I'm sitting there. This weekend's already been nuts. I'm ready to watch the race. And I'm like 5 minutes in, ad break. And I was like,
5 minutes in?
5 minutes in. I was like, wait.
That's inappropriate. That's first 10 laps. Never cut away the first 10 laps.
And then I was like, okay, so I'm trying to speed it up. I get back to the part where there's no ads.
Did you miss any
and
of
I missed.
Oh,
and I was like,
I couldn't.
Wait a second.
No,
and then
inappropriate.
And no joke, it was like another 2 minutes later. I was like, what the F? And then there was 5 ad breaks in the race today. This is the first time it's ever happened. Now, again, I'll say
2 hours, 5 ad breaks. How dare they?
But they all happened within the first hour. And then it was like, okay, no more ads after that. And so I should say this. I didn't watch it live today. So it's possible that on the live feed, there was no ad breaks because that would be insane.
Yeah. I don't understand why no one does ad breaks for F1.
No.
That's why when they're going around this entire track, you see Rolex, you see Lenovo, you see Paramount
ads.
Plus, Lioness, you see all of, and they're working. I remember them all. Liquid Molly, all of those. Heineken Zero. Everything.
And that's why all
Qatar
the drivers,
Airways, all of them are there. We see them. You don't have to give me a commercial.
The drivers are essentially one walking billboard of all their sponsors. The cars have all of their sponsors on it. We don't need but
literally also, McLaren drivers. It's like Coca-Cola, Jack Daniels, Arrow, Dark Trace. It's like all the way down to their forearms is
everything.
Is 2-inch by 6-inch sponsorship squares.
It's too much, but it is what it is.
But that's fine because I don't have to watch it.
But this is like you breaking away from bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, 3 men on, and you're just going to break away to an ad and then come back after the play's done.
Right.
I was infuriated.
Well, because part of the jeopardy of racing is you never know. And today is a perfect example. You never know when something's going to happen. Every cutscene was somebody spinning off into the grass.
It was I have never been so upset when watching F1. And this was the moment where I was like, the Europeans are right. America is freaking ruining this sport.
No, ESPN is not America. ESPN is not America.
Anyway,
I will not stand for this.
Anyway, so I had to get that off of my chest because I was infuriated at American TV and how they are ruining F1.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, let's jump into the race. So let's start with the best team there was. Red Bull. Red Bull nailed it. Red Bull, the team of Red Bull is one driver these days.
Yes. One.
Max Verstappen qualified P12. got a 5 pace grid penalty.
Yep.
Ends up starting the race in P17, finishes the race in first place.
Yeah, unreal. I mean, by like the first couple laps, he had already made up like 7 places by like the second lap. And this is where
the first corner of the second lap.
I mean, it was unreal. This is where, you know, Max really shines. And again, this weekend, he was furious. He was, I mean, especially in qualifying, where his lap essentially got canceled by the red flag. I've never seen him that angry.
No.
And so going into this race, I think he just channeled all of that and was like, I'm going to freaking beat every single driver in my path. And it was his talent. It was his talent driving in mixed conditions, which he's already proven that he can drive in mixed conditions. But it was also the team's strategy.
100%.
They didn't bring him into pit. They waited. Meanwhile, George Russell, Lando Norris, both come into pit. And when the red flag comes out a couple laps later,
they're pissed.
They're furious.
Yeah.
But it was Alpine and it was Red Bull that said, yeah, we're not going to pit.
And they tried to say it was luck. But Alpine was like, no, we just risked it.
Yeah.
We knew either we were going to ride it out to the end on these used tires or we were going to get a red flag and get the tires changed. Yeah. And they sure did.
Yeah. I mean, and in this case, like, sometimes you make your own luck. Sometimes you just say, we are going to choose option A, hoping that we will find luck on option A. And so, I mean, Max, it was incredible to see. And I'll say this too, like, obviously, you know, we've said that Red Bull is essentially a one racing driver team at this point. Checo did have a spin early on, pushed him towards the back of the pack. Obviously, with all the red flags, with the crazy conditions, it was hard for him to come back through.
And
I mean, it was Lawson. Let's just be honest. He couldn't get past Lawson.
It's just a familiar story with Perez.
I know.
It's a few good moves overshadowed by mediocre results.
P11.
Yes.
Isn't he number 11?
P7, someone took the exact same card at P7 from P17 to first place. And Max didn't spend 4 hours trying to overtake Liam Lawson and complain about it on the radio. Max did some insane moves.
No.
Max did some insane moves. I don't think Piastri even knew that Max was coming down the inside of him. I don't think Max knew that he could outbrake Piastri like that. There was one point where he overtook somebody and he just rolled off the brakes. He was like, no, actually, I think I can make this go a little bit longer. Like, he was on rails today. That
was unreal. I'm stunned he didn't crash. I'm stunned he didn't crash.
Beyond stunned he didn't crash.
Yeah, like, even the Piastri move, I was like, oh my God.
That's crazy.
Piastri
wasn't even protecting. Because he was like, this is so far back, he's not going to come. And Max was just like, doink. It was incredible. It was an amazing drive. It was all. Horner said, today was a demonstration of pure driver talent. Max is untouchable. I agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
We mentioned this a little bit earlier before the show. This really sealed the Drivers' Championship. It's done
100%.
At this point, it's like 62.
Lando's got to outscore Max by 21 points.
It's not going to happen. Max is not going to DNF the next 3 race weekends.
The only time that Lando has outscored him by 12, which is what he needed to do leading into this weekend, was when Max DNF'd.
Yeah.
Like all the way back. Was that Australia? Something crazy.
Yeah, it was Australia.
It was forever ago.
When his car caught on fire.
Exactly.
Brakes caught on fire. Yeah.
That's the only time that Lando has outscored him by 12. Yep. And if we think the next 3 races on the form that Max is on.
No. I mean, and this was the crazy thing too, because going into this race, it looked as if Lando was going to pull this off. Because again, qualifying was this morning. It was this morning because of the weather.
Gosh.
So this morning, Lando was P1 in qualifying. and Max was P17.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, the weather's terrible. This is going to be atrocious for Max to get through. We're probably going to have some, red flags. Lando's just going to do what he does, and he's going to actually pull off this win and get a bunch more points and cut into Max's lead. And then after, whatever it was, lap 1, 2, when Max was like up to 10th, I was like,
right.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
But yeah, it was incredible. I mean, and then once it was Max sandwiched between the Alpines, I was like, yeah, he's not going to be in this Alpine sandwich. Mm-mm. He's going to, as soon as this comes, this restart happens, he's going to take P1, and he did that and never looked back. So,
man, Red Bull had, well, half of Red Bull had the weekend of their life. Yes. It was an underdog story of colossal odds.
I mean, and again, it's been, I think, 11 races since Max won.
And this was the race he won from 17th place. It was
unreal.
It felt like watching a game of Russian roulette. Like you just never knew who was going to get taken out. It was so random. And talking about that, let's jump down to the bottom performers, which is
we're gonna. I like this. Let's do that.
You asked me to do that last week.
Thank you,
Williams. What a rough weekend for Williams.
Well,
beyond the race itself, where Albon didn't even start.
It wasn't just a rough weekend. It was that qualifying this morning, Albon in Q3 is P2. There is a moment where I was like,
and the whole Williams package is looking incredible.
Oh, unreal.
Like it was a question of everyone thought Haas was going to rip in Brazil because they've just been on a tear.
Yeah.
And they thought Williams is kind of fading towards the back. Haas was really nowhere. And Albon was taking that car, coming on the radio going, I think we got a little bit more in us, guys. I think we can squeeze a couple more tenths out of this corner and that corner.
I mean, it was incredible going into Q3, Albon and P2. And there's a moment where I was like, wait a second.
He was splitting the McLarens.
Albon going to take pole? And that was a very real possibility. And so it was like they were literally at the top, and you're like, oh my God, Williams.
Yes.
And then Albon crashes, and his car looks like a Tootsie Roll. It's like that you chewed up,
literally like a fortune
out.
cookie.
And I was like,
insane.
Oh my God. I'm like, you could see he was shaken up. What he was kind of getting
one wheel was gone. We couldn't even find it.
Unreal. So like, I mean, automatically you're like, oh no.
It was like they had two Logan Sargents out there. Just a couple Mick Schumacher crashes on the field.
There was a moment,
Latifi moment. Like it was a lot of damage. Colapinto crashed in qualifying. Albon crashed in qualifying. Albon's crash was so bad. I was just pulling up the post
from the team.
Unfortunately, after assessing the extensive damage sustained to Alex Albon's car, the required repairs could not be accomplished in the short window of time between qualifying and the race.
Like
the team is therefore forced to withdraw Alex's car for the remainder of the Grand Prix. Franco went on to race, to crash as well, under a safety car.
And his crash too, like,
so weird. Just lost the rear end.
I mean, like
coolant spraying all over the track.
Yeah, I saw that. It was just like gushing out the side.
It was it was wild. It was a terrible weekend.
I felt for the Williams team. I was like, y'all don't deserve this. Like, this is nothing y'all deserve. Like, y'all have worked so hard. You could have been on the front row. I mean,
and they dropped. We came into the weekend. It would take Alpine 4 points to be ahead of Williams.
Which for us, we're saying that's going to be really hard because points are so hard to come
100%.
by.
Well, not to spoil the next segment, but
we're going to go back to the top.
Definitely jumped ahead of them this week. And Val's frustration was palpable. You could feel it through the feed on the television. They're out for redemption in the last 3 races. The question is do you think they can get it?
Well, let me pull up the team standings right now. So we've got Alpine jumped to 6th place.
Under Aston Martin.
Under Aston at 49, which you're not going to say this because you're too kind. I will say this. You've said in previous episode that Alpine is coming back to the midfield and they're going to be in the midfield. I have said time and again, they're not going to do it.
I said Alpine will always be a midfield
and
mediocre
I didn't want to believe it.
The hard thing is that had it not been for the rain, I would be wrong in this circumstance.
Do you know where they were before this race? They were 9th place with 14 points.
They were in a terrible place.
14 points.
But I will say this. We're not talking about them right now, so don't make me talk about Alpine because I have some things to say about it.
Okay. You want to still talk about Williams?
And we don't have to talk about it much more. Albon didn't start the race.
No.
Another blow to the team's already terrible season.
Yeah.
Not to mention my F1 fantasy team. And then Colapinto, the guy who's been on a tear.
Oh, yeah.
Ends up throwing the race away at a really, for a lack of better words, a rookie moment.
Yeah, I'm going to look at when he crashed in my notes real quick here. Lap 32. So it was, again, he caused the red flag, one of the red flags, one of them, halfway through the race. And, his car looked ironically similar to Albon's in like how mangled it was. It wasn't just like a into the wall. It was like, oh, this thing's destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
And so
literally the entire side pod was disappeared and just green coolant liquid was just chucking out the side of the vehicle.
Yeah.
His rear wheel was like folded up. Like it was a mess.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare. And it was a nightmare of a weekend for Williams.
Yeah. Now Williams, 9th place, 17 points, and they're in no man's land. Visa Cash App is 8th place with 44 points. And Kick is 10th place with 0 points. So now it's like Williams is kind of in that Mercedes Aston world of like, no one's going to catch us, but we're not catching anybody.
Yeah.
Unless, there's something bonkers that happens again where Williams, gets 2 points, place finishes. But at this point, they're
unless it rains in Vegas, which I've been to Vegas in November, pretty unlikely.
It'd be cold, but it's not going to rain.
And it's definitely not going to rain in the Middle East for the next, 2 races after that. So I doubt we're going to get this level of jeopardy from the last 3 races.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, Williams last season was noteworthy. We were thinking they were going to come out and honestly be where Haas is now.
Yeah, we did.
Haas was nowhere, and we expected them to be nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next year if Williams is in the same kind of 10th, 9th, maybe 8th place, and then we go into 2026, and they do the same thing? Like, are we looking at a transfer from the Williams family to the investment group to not on the field anymore?
I feel like I may be wrong in this, but part of me is like not really counting next year.
Because what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is like, there's not going to be a whole lot of changes that teams will be making to their cars for next year. This is a continuation of the regulations. 26 is really where it's like, okay, what do you got?
Right.
What are you showing up with? And so it's like, for me, next year almost feels like it's going to be a continuation of the second half of this season.
Right.
Where it's like McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes are hopefully all going to be fighting for the championship next year, which would be incredible.
Right.
Right. But it's just like everyone just kind of making minor improvements on what they already kind of found this season. So Williams, I'd love for them to be more, competitive next year, but I wouldn't hold it against them next year if they're in 9th place again. Because again, you've got Visa Cash App, who, let's say they've got Liam next year, and they've got Yuki still, and you've got Haas, and now Alpine. Alpine, Haas, and Visa Cash App are all within 5 points of each other.
Right.
they're having a 3-way battle right now at the back end of the pack because they're that tight now. So like Williams, I wouldn't fault them if they don't all of a sudden find this incredible form or pace in 26. If they're in 9th place, then it's like, okay, well, something needs to change. But and maybe I'm alone in thinking that, but I don't think I am. I feel like I've heard a lot of folks kind of say, hey, listen, 25 is going to be kind of a continuation of this year. A lot of teams are already just kind of like looking to 26, you know? So
well, how do you think that makes Carlos feel?
I mean, I don't think Carlos feels as much as James Viles would say, no, Carlos is excited for the potential. I'm like, sure, Carlos is excited to leave the Tifosi.
He won a race last week, bro.
And Ferrari to go to Williams, where your two drivers, you know, freaking rolled their cars into oblivion, and one of them was off the grid. Like, sure, he's excited to go there.
Yeah,
to 9th place. No, he's not.
Yeah, the last time you were excited was Nigel Mansell.
It's just, if I'm Carlos, I want to still race in F1.
Right.
So Williams gives me the opportunity to do that. I hope he doesn't like his career ends there. And I hope he can improve the team and help improve them. I don't think he's going to do it next year. I don't think Williams is all of a sudden going to find some, you know, magic form next year. I think it'll come in 26. And I think Sainz has to be honest with himself about that as well. And I think James, he was talking to the Sky team this weekend on Saturday when the qualifying was delayed. And he even kind of hinted like, listen, he's excited for the potential of the future.
Yeah.
He's excited for what we are bringing in 26, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think Sainz is at.
Man, I hope it pays off in 2026. It'll be a dud if it doesn't. It's going to be a gamble. The 2026 season will be bonkers.
Oh, it's going to be nuts. I mean,
it's going to be like Mercedes side pods all over again. It's going to be.
I mean, some teams are going to get it and some teams aren't. And
Mercedes zero pods all over again, like I said.
We might have a team do a Red Bull-esque thing where they are miles ahead of the competition and it takes a couple of years for everyone to catch up. I hope not. But it's possible.
That'll probably be kick. Moving on to...
That's the one thing I won't be wrong about this.
That's the one thing you will most likely not be wrong about. And I will owe you $30 when we get to the end of the season. Let's move on to the second best team, which, if I'm being honest, I never thought I would say in this season, this 2024 season, which is Alpine. Alpine had a fairy tale double podium finish. Who saw that coming?
No one. I don't think they even saw it coming. I mean,
the looks on their drivers' faces said absolutely not.
I mean, we've talked about the dysfunction at Alpine this season and how lost Alpine has been.
My goodness.
And how they have just axed their leadership and they've had people leaving the team. And it's just been the picture of what not to do if you own an F1 team. Like they have been the example of that.
Until a rainy race day.
Where all of a sudden, like, wait a second, our car's actually good in the rain? Like in the worst conditions
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I mean they're a French team. Maybe they practice in the rain. I don't know.
I had to geek out on this because I was like, how do you go from being back markers to podium contenders?
It was almost as if Kick had almost because they were
not dissimilar.
They were 9th place.
Not dissimilar. The thing that I looked back on was in Austin, they introduced, or before Austin, they introduced the upgrade on Gasly's car, and he performed. It actually performed. And then they were able to add it to Gasly and Ocon's for Mexico. And they did okay. They did better than they normally did. And then this weekend, it seems like their upgrade, whatever they added in Austin, has actually made the car work. And here's the thing that we have to remember. They were 19th and 20th in Bahrain this year. They were Kick at the start of this season.
They were at the very back.
They were. It was prolific how bad they were.
Yes.
It was
they were stunned at how
unimaginable. They were worse than Haas, who said they would be the worst. That like you have to be very bad to
Haas
beat the
like,
person that says we might as well be an F2. Guys, this is just a rebuilding year for us.
Yep.
And now they're P2 and P3. And I don't care. If you're only as good as your last race, that is not a subjective term that only applies to you if it's raining or not. You're only as good as your last race. And they nailed it. They took massive risks, Ben. What is happening in the Alpine camp?
I think they had nothing to lose.
That's an understatement.
Well, it's just they're in 9th place. You've got nothing to lose. Somehow, when the gods give you a blessing, you don't ask why it was sent. You just say yes. The Prince of Egypt. I
accept.
You just literally say, wait a second. Our two drivers are in 1st and 3rd, and like there's a red flag, and we get to change our tires.
Led the race.
I was like, what is
like
Ocon?
A good Ocon. Sorry, Albon did not lead the race. Albon was done. Ocon led the race for like a chunk of laps.
And he kept Max behind him. I was like,
that's when I was texting you in all caps, by the way, are you watching this?
Yes. I think they rolled the dice, but their car performed in terrible conditions. And more than that, their drivers performed
100%.
And there was other drivers who didn't and who were sliding all over the place and causing red flags. And we had 5 DNFs. And these Alpine drivers, they held it and they didn't crack under pressure.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that I'm most impressed by, because I have not been impressed with Alpine this season. And that's no secret. But I was impressed by the fact that Ocon kept Max behind him as long as he did, built a gap. Now he lost it to Max on the restart, our 5th red flag. But that's just because Max is Max, and Max, in those moments, is able to perform and to overtake. But
as much as their upgrades are good, they're not swinging in the same realm as Red Bull, Mercedes.
I didn't expect him to win.
They're not there.
But the fact that they still finished 2nd and 3rd,
100%,
was incredibly impressive.
100%. Yeah, I mean, they finished this weekend. They made, I think it was Ted who said this is a $50 million weekend for them.
It's insane.
The constructors, the difference between of where they were to where they ended this weekend, if they can hold this up until the end of the season, that was a $50 million weekend for them. This weekend changed their entire season in a moment. It was incredible. They came into this weekend saying we need to get 4 points to jump Williams to go into, 8th place. God. And they not only jumped Williams, they jumped RB, they jumped Haas, and they landed in 6th place.
That's unreal.
They're back in Alpine's comfortable territory of mediocrity.
Where you said
they are the mid-pack bandits. That's where they live. It's almost like the F1 gods have just aligned the universe for Alpine to just exist in mediocrity.
Yes, but today was not.
No, today was not mediocre.
Today was a moment they need to cherish for a long time, because I don't anticipate they're going to have a double podium finish.
No,
in the last 3 races of this season. But I mean, stunning. I was stunned.
Yeah. My only thing that really bugged me was I wish it was Gasly who was in P2 and not Ocon. But that's a personal preference.
That's personal.
Yeah.
I wish Ocon wasn't going to Haas next year.
That is also.
Alas, here we are.
Every time you remind me of that, it hurts. Every time you remind me.
I've become less of a Haas fan.
Okay.
When I think of that.
So we'll jump into our next team. So theoretically, we already talked about the worst team, which means that since for the first time in many, many races, it wasn't Kick, we would think naturally we'd think about Kick next, because they would be classified as the next worst team.
They would.
But they're not. It's Aston Martin, which is wild to think about. Number one, the Nepo baby ended his race before it began.
I have a new phrase for him.
Ooh, give it to me.
Formula One's favorite son. I was like, yes.
Who said that? Did you come up with that?
I came up with that.
That's incredible.
I was like, he is the favorite son, and there's nothing he can do that will ever jeopardize his seat.
No.
I literally was like, wait a second. If this was any other driver, if this was Checo crashing out on the formation lap, we'd be like, get this guy out of here. He's done. But it's not.
I have a friend, he watches it with his wife, and he had started the race, and he's an F1 like nerd. So he watches like the formation lap, and generally he'll pause it at the race start, and then his wife will like come in or whatever. And he was like, hey, I got to rewind this. You got to watch this. You got to watch this. Because it's
beach day, beached his car.
Like dramatic.
Well, he first spun off on the pavement still, and then
into
the next
the gravel.
shot, it was in the gravel. I was like, wait
what happened,
why didn't
dude?
you just go?
Alonso had an epic recovery after the restart.
Teddy was talking about that. He's like, oh my God, Alonso's like made up 15 seconds. And they're like, Crofty's like, yeah, why don't you ask him how good he feels about making up 15 seconds when it doesn't matter in like P15?
Yeah, he came on the radio and said something that I really respected of him. And he sounded old.
Yeah, he did.
But, he comes on the radio, he goes, hey guys, I'm going to finish this race. Ugh. So he like went over a bump, like grunted. And he goes, for the mechanics, you guys did an amazing job this weekend. It's really bumpy in here. It's really bad. I'm in a lot of pain. My back is killing me.
I was like,
I get it, dude. I've got 2 kids. Same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, they resurfaced the track, but there was so many
make
drivers.
it smoother.
To make it smoother. Ideally, that's what you would do when you resurface. But that's not what the drivers' experience were.
No.
So many of them were just like, what is going on?
Well, and I think some of the teams even decided to set up their cars to be lower. Like even the Mercedes, you could see it down the main strip. Sparks were flying everywhere. It looked like it was dragging itself down the main strip.
Yeah.
And I think it was Karun Chandok from the Sky Sports team. He was like, I think after this, the racetrack owner and organizers are going to go back to whoever they paid to repave this thing and say, this is not at all what
give us
it
a
is.
refund.
Like imagine someone renovating your house and it not being what you wanted. Like you're going to go back to them and be like, you need to fix this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we'll see a different Sao Paulo Grand Prix next year. It was an unfortunate. Alonso's a hero in my mind still one of my favorite drivers. He finished that race.
Class act.
He could have easily told them that he wanted to retire the car. He was in a lot of pain, but it was happened. And then we go to my team, Mercedes.
Yeah. Russ in 4th. Hunting down Gasly. Hunting down Gasly. He finished less than a second behind him.
I know.
He could have taken 3rd place. And that's where, going to Alpine again, they stayed cool under pressure. They were under pressure, especially for those podium places, from better drivers, better cars. And so, Mercedes. Russ finishes 4th. We already talked about how he
got
felt.
Screwed by the
and
safety cars and the red flags as well.
Yeah, I mean, call it a miscue on strategy, call it just luck.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is what it is. But he got screwed over. Hamilton finishes P10.
Yeah, he was racing and he was racing well and racing a bunch of people, but he's not a midfield driver.
No.
And he was racing a bunch of midfielders. And that kind of sums up Mercedes' struggles. Like they're a car out of place.
Yeah.
At one point in time, he was hunting down Colapinto in a Williams.
Oh, yeah.
And I could only imagine what you're thinking. This is like Colapinto's 3rd race, something like that. And he's got the dude behind him that has won more races than anyone in the history of Formula One.
Yeah, it's insane.
Hunting him down in the wet and a country that he's an honorary citizen of. I can only imagine. But it took Hamilton a minute to get by him. Like that car was trash.
Yeah.
Absolute trash.
Yeah, no, I mean, Russell's finish, got some decent points, but we've already talked about this. Like, at this point, it doesn't really matter. Mercedes isn't walking away with more money.
No.
Based on where they finish.
Nor do they need it.
And they're racing kind of funky people. Like, you mentioned this before, Mercedes is used to winning or used to being at the front, but like Hamilton's racing a Williams driver. 100%. Russ is trying to hunt down Alpine. It's like, wait, what? Alternate universe are we in?
Exactly.
Where this is where we're racing. So, yeah, like funky weekend again. Chalk it up to the bonkers weather that we had and all the craziness.
Yeah. But even if he did jump the Alpines, Max was 19 seconds ahead of Ocon.
Yeah. Max
almost 20 seconds. The dude put in 5 fastest laps in a row. Just boom, 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 boom. Nailed it. God. It was a once in a generation race. Like, I don't understand how that stuff happened today.
It's almost as if all the things we were frustrated with Max about last week, you kind of have to step back in a week like this and just be like, my God, this guy is a good one of the best, one of the greats.
100%. No, 100%. Today solidified it for me, dude. I was like,
unreal.
As much as I personally don't connect with Max Verstappen, and I don't understand why
like
you're
why
you're such a fan of him. I can respect the man as a racer.
I mean,
ultimately, you can't deny it. The dude is a beast.
Yeah.
And I do look at him and I go, I wonder if this is what people thought of Michael Schumacher. I wonder if this is what people thought of Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel in their prime. And I think what we're looking at is one of the greats of F1.
You just have to respect greatness. I think I like Max, since you asked.
You did. I don't remember.
That was a rhetorical question. I wasn't expecting a response. No, I like Max because Max, when he started, had very much kind of an outsider. I'm just going to come in and freaking do racing the way I feel like I need to do it. And everyone's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Who's this 17-year-old? Like, take a chill pill, bro. And he never did. He never took a chill pill. And he has had such crystal clarity on 100%. How he is going to show up in the sport. And like, there was someone from Sky saying, you think about Lewis Hamilton, he's like producing movies and he's making, agave,
he's at the Met Gala
free.
as one of their
Max is like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to race.
I'm just going to race and sim race.
I'm just going to sim race, and race and like do more racing. And like, there's this whole world for someone like Max. Like, Max was in like a Heineken 0 alcohol beer ad because and like you could tell he was in it and he's like, what am I doing here? Why am I not on my sim right now?
Exactly.
And like, I think I have to respect, and I think that's why I like him as a racer so much, is because like he just knows who he is. He knows what he brings to the table. And he's like, listen, I'm not going to change. Now, last week we talked about how he raced and he didn't change, and it's dangerous, borderline. And you have to be like, dang it. Like, this guy's unapologetically himself.
Right.
And he's not trying to impress anyone. He's just like, I just love racing. And as soon as I stop love racing, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm moving on to another racing that I can love.
And there's something that's like, wow, to have that level of just clarity.
And I do think part of his personality is highlighted and accentuated and dramatized, to be honest, because of the level of visibility that Formula One has as a sport.
Yeah.
If he was in any other World Rally Car racing or this, that, or the other, people would just whatever.
Yeah.
But because he is part of this extremely international and visible sport, his weird personality gets highlighted and his proclivities get dramatized.
And I love that it's kind of like he's like, I'm not changing my weird personality. It's just, this is who I am. Just deal with it, people.
No, I'm just going to be a douche. I don't care. Well, that has nothing to do with Mercedes, which is what we were talking about. But Mercedes
I just had to go back to that. I was like inspired.
I
was re-inspired because Mercedes, they're lost. I mean, they're not getting any better.
They're lost this weekend. They've known where they were most of the season.
Mercedes has known their North Star the last 4.
No, it's not about knowing their North Star. They've just owned the fact that they're there to sweep up the points when the big guys can't do it anymore. They realized that halfway through the season. This weekend was good for George, terrible for Hamilton. And
there was a point where like people were cheering more for Franco than for Hamilton. I was like, oh.
Why? Because Franco overtook Hamilton. That's why. Oh, Williams overtook Mercedes.
I know. My cost back.
We're talking about the team.
Unreal.
When George was driving for them, he asked them to retire the car every race because he was getting lapped 3 or 4 times by the front runners.
Oh, God.
And now that same car is overtaking Mercedes. And so I don't know if that's a good thing to say about Williams or a worse thing to say about Mercedes or just a little bit of both. But either way, they found themselves in a dark place this weekend, which leads us to our next team who's familiar with a dark place, which is Kick Sauber. And they're not the worst. Bottas actually had a decent run.
Where did he finish? 13th?
He raced well this weekend.
Now, for context, yes, Bottas finished 13th and his teammate finished 15th. They were still in the bottom 3. Which is tough.
They survived.
But and then you think like Sainz, Colapinto, Albon, Stroll, Hulkenberg all didn't finish. All of whom would have finished ahead of them.
Maybe. Hulkenberg had a massive spin.
Sainz would have finished ahead of him.
Sainz would have definitely
Colapinto, yes. Albon,
but they didn't.
Stroll, they didn't because they crashed.
Exactly.
They crashed.
So they had a good weekend.
For them, this was a good weekend.
I would say Bottas had a decent run. I think the one thing that stopped him was they just couldn't figure out how to warm up their tires. I think if they actually figured out how to warm up their tires, the pace that Aston Martin had even in Alonso was shocking. It was very bad.
Yeah.
I think if he could have figured out their tires, which they can't figure out anything this season,
then
it would have happened. Zhou's day was tough.
Yeah.
P15, which is,
the
last.
Do you remember when Kicks had they couldn't get their wheels off for like a minute at the end of the season?
Yeah, no, repeatedly.
Repeatedly. Multiple, there's like the
30, 45 second
or something like
30 or 45 second.
I think there was one point it was a minute pit stop. A minute plus pit stop. This is a team that I want to be proven wrong. I want them to score points. I want them to validate their existence in the
Even
sport.
now, I really regret making that bet with you. They're not going to score a point this season.
Of course they're not. But I want them to. You're in the sport.
You're here for a reason. We want 10 teams scoring points.
We do. If anyone listens to this show for any length of time, you know I'm from Cleveland. There was a season when the Cleveland Browns had a perfect season because they lost every single game. Now, there was something that was kind of ironic.
Perfection is a funny definition.
Right. There was there's something funny about that as a Cleveland fan, and there was a parade, and Cleveland fans are ridiculously loyal to their crappy teams. But there is something about that where you're like, God, are we in the right sport?
Right, exactly.
We can't compete.
Exactly.
And if we can't compete, then why are we here? And in F1, I know only half the grid gets points, but at some point you got to be like, what are we doing here? I feel like that would be the struggle of my life to show up on the grid if I know, hey, you're not getting points.
No.
The whole year you're not going to get any points.
Exactly.
And we're going to be in dead last, and no one's getting bonuses, and no one's, getting anything because.
So I don't know why you want to be here next year.
I don't know,
Audi's buying us, but that doesn't matter until 2026. 2025 is going to be suck fest too.
No, it's just how would you remain
motivated?
No,
I don't know. I honestly have no idea. I mean, Guan Yu Zhou knows that he can't possibly think he's going to be in Formula One next year. So
they still haven't decided. They're stringing us along for that last seat.
Well, they have Hulkenberg in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, Hulk's in.
And then they have the one seat empty, and technically RB's empty too. But, you know, Red Bull kind of stays with their own people unless this Colapinto thing comes through for them. But who wants to go there?
No one.
They have 0 points. Next year, if the cars aren't changing, then they'll have 0 points again next year.
God.
And then they'll come into 2026 with a brand new engine manufacturer, a brand new aerodynamic design, a brand new engine layout.
Yeah.
You're rolling the dice. It is a massive gamble. We're not talking about Red Bull. We're not talking about Mercedes. Okay, first of all, Mercedes designing their own car, keeping their own engine, and designing their own new engine. They're in a great place. You're talking about a team that is Audi, hasn't been in Formula One.
Yeah.
Is coming in with a brand new engine of their own design and designing an F1 car, which they haven't done in years. Well,
yeah. I don't anticipate them being very competitive. Unless they like strike gold. It has happened before.
Once.
I know.
Braun.
But it
once.
has happened.
Jensen Button won his world title because of a double diffuser. Once. I don't know if you can.
I mean,
I feel like those days are done.
It was a different F1. Like that was a different time.
Yes.
Sure. But I mean, wouldn't that be insane?
It would be insane.
Unreal.
It would be crazy.
It's not going to happen, but
no.
I mean, it could.
Yeah, because even when you think of it in, you know, the last few years, Red Bull is the one that was the most dominant, but that was years of iteration, and that's Adrian Newey. Like, you can never bet against Adrian Newey. Yeah. So, I don't see what's going to happen with Kick. I don't know how they're surviving, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't got much more to say.
What are your thoughts about Ferrari?
Yeah, you know, interesting race for them. Sainz obviously has his DNF. He like crashes, but then like starts driving away. I was like, oh, is he?
But then
like,
stops.
But then stops and is like,
gets out. I'm done.
I want to go take a nap. So obviously Sainz didn't have a great race.
Coming off of an amazing race win in Mexico, too. It's a total bummer.
It is like the highs and the lows of the sport on display here. Chuck finishes in 5th, ahead of Norris, behind Russell. I mean, so he had a decent race. At this point, I mean, Chuck's got to mathematically be out of the championship, driver's championship at this point. He's like,
if not extremely.
Yeah, he's like 84-ish, 80 something points back. So yeah, he's out. But I mean, he stayed ahead of Lando, and obviously he wasn't able to catch Russell. But yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like felt like a funky weekend for them, and then a funky race, like almost like a Red Bull-esque, where it's like, yeah, one driver gets some points, the other one kind of is out, and it's a bit of a wash.
Yeah. Freddie V, he admitted that P5 was a salvage job for Ferrari.
Yeah.
And looking
from where they're coming from the last couple of races.
And looking towards the rest of the season, they just have to tighten up the ship.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, they're still in second place, but Red Bull is much closer,
nipping at their heels.
And it's quite possible
Red Bull
takes it back.
Livid that they dropped from first to second, let alone from second to third.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
And you can almost feel it in everything that they release, in every interaction that you observe with their representatives.
Yeah.
Performance is paramount right now.
Yep.
I would say it feels like almost that crazy environment that people describe Ferrari as. Whereas Ferrari is not about a driver. It's not about a person. It's about Ferrari. You are here to make Ferrari win. Which I love.
I do love that.
I kind of love it.
I do love that. Yeah, it's Ferrari.
I'm still not going to be a Ferrari fan next season.
You say that. I don't believe you.
I'm not. I might switch to McLaren,
your boy
but
Hammy's
I will
going
not go.
there. Your boy Sammy going there.
Hemi is going there. I love him for it. But
yeah, I mean, do you think Ferrari holds on? Do you think they keep second?
I think they'll keep second. They're not going to win. I don't think they'll. They're not consistent enough yet.
Yeah,
they're not. Had they have come out swinging this weekend, I think we would have had a real fight on our hands.
Oh yeah,
and I think it could have been a real good place. But the rain threw everything for a loop.
Yeah, just.
And I was trying to think back on this season. We really haven't had any kind of crazy moments.
No,
it's been kind of a vanilla from like an external circumstance. It's been pretty vanilla. Like there's been no really crazy moments. Like even last year we had that wild, Suzuka moment. Spa was like rained out. Like there was a lot of those kind of unintentional variables that throw a weekend into a bit of chaos.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any this entire season pretty much until this moment.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And so I think it threw a bit of it into disarray. I think Ferrari is kind of writing this weekend off.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were hoping to ride momentum. It did not happen.
Yeah. Again, if they would have been able to get some podiums, if they would have been able to carry the momentum they've had the last couple of weekends, then yeah, I think they would be in serious contention for first place. It's still not mathematically out of the equation. They still could potentially. I know Vegas last year, Chuck was competitive in Vegas.
I mean, he was on the podium.
Yeah. I mean, so there was a point where we even thought he was going to like win.
Yes.
And so it's quite possible that they do well there and they can still take it to McLaren. But at this point, it feels like now they're looking over their shoulders and trying to make sure they hold on to second.
100%.
And keep Red Bull behind them.
So. Yeah. Talking about someone else whose weekend did not go as they expected is Haas. Nico Hülkenberg was spinning out and then black flagged, which feels like a bit of an insult to injury at that point in time. So he's out. It was a brutal day for him. And then Behrman was in for Magnussen, who was not feeling well this weekend.
Yeah, just like
he was sick. More power to you.
Yeah.
And he had a P12 finish, which is decent. But I think as I looked at his race, I went, you're a rookie.
Mm-hmm. It's his first time at this race. But also, I think they said it was his first time racing in the wet like this.
It's his first time driving an F1 car in the wet.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
I think he's come out every time before this. Every time before this he's come out and he's really shown the talent he has. And I think this race in Brazil and the circumstances from the weather really showed that these cars are something to be respected, revered almost.
Yeah.
And when you try to make some ad hoc F2 cowboy-esque move, these cars bite back. They are as incredible, fast, and robust as they are extremely delicate. And you are driving a machine that is supposed to be operated on a knife's edge.
Yeah.
And when you step out of those guardrails for even a moment, it reminds you. And it happens several times for Ollie.
Yeah. But didn't he have a 10-second penalty for causing a collision with Franco?
Yeah.
And then he spun off lap 30. I thought it was Franco. Maybe. I thought it was Franco because Piastri had a penalty for causing a collision with Lawson.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was with Franco. But even Behrman was like, why did I get a penalty? Like, he didn't lose any time. Nothing happened. But got a penalty for that.
And then still hit him, though.
Yeah,
you kind of ran into the back of him. You kind of don't get to get away with that.
And then he spins off at lap 37 after the restart, trying to chase down Sainz. So yeah, there's moments where you're just like, okay, you'll get there. But today was a tough one for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, tough one for Haas. I mean, in general, they get leapfrogged in the constructors, and leapfrogged by a team that was
colossal. I mean, leapfrog.
It was like out of nowhere. Like there's no way this is gonna happen. So
no.
As much as Alpine was like,
they're only a few points behind Alpine, and based off of their historical scoring, if this had happened 5, 6, 7 races ago, it'd be fine. But we're looking at 3 races. They're staring down the barrel of the gun of the end of the season, and it's not looking like it's going to be a good place for them.
Yeah.
Plus, we're heading towards races where it's a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
We got some basically street tracks for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be wild. We'll see how they pull it out. I think, Komatsu's team is needing a little bit of a reset. Mm-hmm. I think they're itching to turn the page on Brazil. And it's like, please, let's just close that. Let's not look at any media for the next few days. Let's not read any articles. We were so excited to sign Toyota, and now this happened, and we're a little bit nervous. But as much as their weekend did not go the way that they wanted it to, neither did McLaren's. I mean, Norris's day went south fast. He started on pole position with his rival in P17 and ended behind his rival.
It was a tale of two drivers where, it was up was down and down was up. I mean,
everything that could go right for Max did. Everything that could go wrong for Lando.
That's literally what it was. That's just what it was. It was just full stop, period. It was Lando walked into the race. You couldn't feel more confident. I mean, I guess you could feel more confident if like Max was disqualified before the race started, where you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to, get Max points here. I even thought, wow, Lando is going to take a massive step forward in the drivers. He's going to keep this thing alive. Like he's going to bite into Max's lead, and it just didn't happen. So Lando loses the lead to Russ on the first turn. Piastri gets the 10-second penalty for causing a collision with Lawson. Then McLaren makes the strategy decision to pull in Lando, do the pit stop. A couple laps later, red flag. And you can hear in Lando's voice, he's like, the other teams, they get to change their tires under the red flag. For free, right? And you can just hear the kind of resignation at that point where he's like, 100%. Oh, we're screwed. Like, this is it. It's done. Because now this is the one pit stop, and Max is going to take this. It was almost like disbelief. Like, how is Max? Because at that point, Max was in second place. How is Max in second place? How did I get here? I was freaking on pole. And
can you imagine looking at the timing boards as you're like driving by in the car going, what is going on? What universe am I living in at the moment?
Yeah.
And how defeating would that feel as Lando?
Well, it felt like the Drivers' Championship ended today. And
statistically, no.
No, statistically, I mean,
mentally.
Yeah, mentally, and
realistically.
Yeah, there's no way Max is going to DNF the next 3 races. Not going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, there was a reporter asking Lando, this was questions, I want to say it was after one of the qualifyings, about the championship with Max. And he kind of snapped. He was like, I'm so sick of these questions.
Oh.
He was like, I'm so sick of people asking me these questions. I'm just focused on racing this weekend. And like he's been saying that all along, but I think now he's digging in.
Which is a bit of a lie.
More. I mean, of course it's a lie, but I think
you don't get into this sport to just race every weekend. You get in this sport to be the world champion.
Of course
so
you do.
To tell me you're not thinking about it when it's statistically possible is a lie.
It's like Liam Lawson saying, I'm not thinking about the Red Bull C. It's like, you're an idiot. Of course you're thinking about it. We all know you're thinking about it. Just be honest. But I think
it's like LeBron starting the season and going, I'm not thinking about winning another title.
Oh, of course he is.
It's like Tom Brady being a quarterback and going like, nah, I'm hoping we just make it to the semifinals. Like, dude, you're thinking Super Bowl.
Yeah, of course you are. I mean, and that's the case but I think Lando knew from the beginning it was a long shot. And so he's ceding the narrative that, hey, I'm just focused on this week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just focused on this week. So that when people can start really pushing him and saying, hey, dude, the championship, he can say, listen, I've always said I was just focused on this week.
I guess that leads me to my question to you is, do we feel like Lando has the grit to be a world champion? You look at what Max did today. You look at how Max interacts with everybody. Like Max gets asked, hey, you're told you need to change the way that you drive. That's what Lando said. What do you say to that, Max? And he holds up 3 fingers indicating his 3 world titles. Like, oh man, does Max have that? Even more. Like, Max has that grit.
Yeah.
Max has that. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I was listening to an interview that someone did with Mika Häkkinen, who was an incredible Formula One driver, and he drove against Michael Schumacher. And he said something. He was like, what Lando needs to understand about Max is what I had to learn to understand about Michael. And that was this, that when you drove against him, you were not getting past him without a price. And that price was going to be, he was going to drive his car. Your wheels are going to touch. He's going to force you to do something that you don't want to do. Because that's the price you have to be willing to pay to get around Michael Schumacher to win a race. Why? Because he is out to win championships.
Yep.
So my question to you is, does Lando have that?
No, not yet. Not this version of Lando. Not this season of Lando. Lando is it's difficult because I want, like, you know, good guys to finish first, right? I want, like, fair racers to finish first.
Sure.
Like, I want people to be able to race hard and fair, and it's like, hey, you won a championship, good for you. And not that anyone's cheating. Max didn't cheat even when he first won his first championship. There's no cheating.
No comment.
But you know, again, there's the price you're going to pay, and this is kind of the mindset and the mentality of folks who are champions. This is just, you're not going to get an ounce from them ever. So I don't think Lando's at that point where he races people that way.
Totally.
And if that's the price that it costs to be a world champion, then it's a price that he's not ready to pay yet.
100%. We talked about it a little bit last week, and someone asked us, after we kind of talked about this, the idea of Max changing, Max not changing. And someone says on our Instagram, who likes to see calm and boring races? Nobody. Or maybe the Brits, since they are convinced they own the sport and can't handle anyone outside of the UK to be a champion. Everyone else likes to see vibrant and thrilling races. That was from Smith's Boudet win.
All right,
fun
Smiths.
name, Smiths. What do you think about that?
What, the part about the Brits?
Maybe not the Brits, but
like the boring races.
The boring races. How do we race fair? How do we have this kind of fight between Max and Lando, which doesn't end with somebody in a wall, but ends with great racing?
I mean, sport is sport first and foremost, but it's also entertainment, right? And like there's you know, these meta narratives, there's like these, you know, backstories, there's context, there's drama, there's competition, there's rivalry. Like that's all part of it, and that's all what we love about the sport. And so I would say when these racers are racing, like they understand that there's, you know, 300,000 people there that we can see them. And so I think that has to play a part, you know, in your psyche. That has to like egg you on, that has to motivate in some capacity. And so, yeah, I mean, are there moves that racers make because they're like, hey, when Crofty's making the call, you know, through goes Hamilton.
Yeah.
What do you think Hamilton's thinking in this moment where he's like, oh my God, I'm gonna pass these two guys right here. I'm gonna get on the podium. all of Britain is losing their
exactly.
I mean, like, that's what we show up for.
Exactly.
So, like, yeah,
you want that kind.
That's what we want. We want competition, which is entertainment.
Right. And even today, we wanted Max to do a drive from 7. F1 posted that 5 out of the last 1,121 Formula One Grand Prix.
5. Wow.
5 have been won from 17 or lower on the grid.
That's rare company.
That is crazy rare company.
Yeah.
Another one of those drivers is Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
And so the level of like incredible racing pedigree we have on the grid right now is out of control. I just want to see it done well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's where, this tension with the stewards, which I'll say this real quick, because we, go back and forth between wanting there to be regulation, wanting there to be rules, and just saying, go screw
eliminate
it.
all rules. That's my vibe. I want all rules eliminated.
That's your vibe. I will say the race director, the FIA, the stewards, they had their hands full this weekend. I was like stressing out just thinking about all the split-second decisions these folks had to make. And by and large, it felt like they did a good job. Like
I agree.
They navigated the insanity of the weekend.
Well, even moving qualifying to race day. That was a ballsy choice that they got criticized on in previous years.
But I mean, it panned out and it set up an incredible race. So I'll say that, like,
one of the best of my life was watching this race today.
It was you did not know what was going to happen.
You had no idea. It was super fun. I wouldn't have traded it for a different race. There's one team and one team alone that we need to talk about last, and that is RB, VCarb. Lawson fought a hard race. Played it smart, scored points.
Yeah.
This rookie isn't here to play.
I like this guy a lot.
I like him a lot.
I will say this. I felt bad for Yuki starting at P3, right? Like, but again, I mean, Lando started P1 and obviously didn't finish there. So, like, and then Lawson, I think, did Lawson start in P6?
They both started pretty high.
And so I was impressed to see that. Obviously, they both didn't finish there. But Lawson was racing Checo hard, wouldn't give up track position at one point. I love that. I love that there's like this intense rivalry between these two guys already. Inter-team. And I love that Lawson's just like, I'm not giving you an inch. And
okay. He'll give Max an inch.
He gave Max
5
called
feet.
Into, freaking horn dog. Should I let him through? Okay, I'll let him through.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the one part where I was like,
"Hi, Christian, can I let this guy through?" And he lets him through.
That was
and then Checo rolls up.
Come on.
And suddenly we've got the New Zealand Ministry of Defense on the Brazilian
the All
track,
Blacks,
putting every elbow and other people's elbows out to keep. I mean, he caused Checo to lose a place at one point in time.
Yeah, I mean, if that's not like reading the tea leaves with how like Checo's viewed in the team, where it's like, oh no, Max, you're gonna let Max through. Checo, do whatever the hell you want with Checo.
Well, here's the thing. They're pretty strict. Like VCarb and Red Bull can't, Horner can't call.
Yeah, of course.
There would be massive repercussions.
Yeah.
Now there's unspoken things, of course.
Yeah.
Max is in contention. He's a Red Bull driver. You're a Red Bull driver. You want his seat. He's not going to give it up. So you want his teammate's seat. If you stop him from getting points against Lando Norris, how do you think we're going to view that?
Yeah.
There's unspoken things.
Yeah.
And then there's Checo.
Well, it's you. You have to be Checo.
You're versing Checo.
You have to be him.
You have to.
You're going toe to toe with Checo every single race.
You know this.
Yeah.
It's all the media is writing about.
Yeah.
It's all anyone ever asks you about.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's most likely what Helmut Marko is talking to you about.
Yeah.
And so when the dude rolls up and he's trying to come down the inside and take the corner, you'll move under braking.
Yeah.
You'll make whatever you have to do happen and throw every elbow out. And it was some fun racing to watch.
He is here to stay, and more as every weekend passes, again, as someone who's on the outside looking in, it appears this guy is going to a Red Bull seat. Like, clearly he can beat your second driver.
Yep.
In a far worse car. Clearly this guy can like compete at a high level.
100%.
And so if he's beating Checo with Checo in a Red Bull, you have to just say like, this is inevitable. This guy's going to Red Bull at some point. And that some point is like, oh, I don't know, this season, or if not this season, next season at a minimum. But yeah, it was really fun to watch Liam just go at it with Checo today.
What are your thoughts on the rumor of Franco Colapinto taking that Red Bull seat?
I heard that. It doesn't really make sense to me. Like, yes, I love Franco. We talked about this. I want him to have a seat. He's incredible. But it kind of goes against Red Bull's philosophy of, hey, we've got this sister team. These drivers are, in position for an open seat at Red Bull. We switch drivers, intermittently. It's meant to put pressure on our top drivers. So it feels like, why would you pull in Franco when Liam's solid?
Right.
Liam's freaking solid. Like, Liam's homegrown. He's yours. Like, if I've got to pick between Liam and Franco, I'd probably go Liam just because he's been part of the team. He understands like the pressure cooker that Red Bull is. He's used to it. He can deal. You throw Franco in, you don't know if he can handle the pressure. And so why are you going to roll the dice with someone who doesn't understand team culture and the craziness of Red Bull culture? Liam does, and he's not cracking. Right. Man. And so, yeah, I know that was a rumor out there. It feels a little...
It's the question almost still to be asked is, why not Yuki? Even today, Yuki finished 2 places ahead of Liam.
I mean, I would just, he's not going to happen, dude. I'll say it again.
I don't know.
I don't ever see Red Bull promoting Yuki.
I don't either. I know Honda's pushing for it, but again, I don't see it happening.
They're out the door.
Man, what a crazy race weekend.
It was, I think, one of the best F1 weekends, since I've been a fan of the sport.
No, I agree 100%. It was a wild weekend. Not only was it incredible on track, it was incredible off track because I moved up into second place in our F1 fantasy league.
You.
Yeah, Ben still has Danny Ricciardo in his team, so he's clearly super engaged.
Correction. Right before we recorded, I decided to care again, which, loose use of the term. And I changed out my entire team, both my constructors, because I have the unlimited whatever.
Yeah, well, it'll only last for one race, so it'll default back to Danny Ricciardo after
everything on black in Vegas and just...
Oh, jeez.
I've got, everybody in there and see if I can, get some points.
Talking about Las Vegas, it's coming up November 21st through the 23rd. It will be the Las Vegas Grand Prix, the second of the new Las Vegas racetrack. I think it's going to be even bigger and better than last year.
Yeah, bummer we're not going to be there this year, but
bummer we're not going to be this year, but
it is what it is.
It is what it is. We'll go to Qatar.
Sure.
What are your predictions? Who do you think it'll be?
Alpine's definitely going to be on the podium.
Okay.
That's a lie. I think Max is in some pretty rare form. I feel I'm going to do Max P1, Lando P2, and I'm going to throw a Ferrari in there and say Chuck is going to be P3.
Bold.
I know, but Chuck last year was really competitive. There's a point we thought he was going to win.
Super competitive.
Max, I mean, you're coming from just the heights right now. This guy like had the drive of his life. I think he's going to show up in Vegas where he did well last year and is going to continue the momentum. But again, McLaren is still competitive, and they've got a lot to prove. They need to score points. You're going to see that motivation. Ferrari is gunning to stay ahead of Red Bull, so I think we're going to see a mix of podium. Checo ain't going to be anywhere on there. I don't anticipate Sainz or Piastri, but who knows?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm looking at a Lando number 1, Max number 2, and Leclerc number 3. I think that's where we will go. Leclerc did really well there last year. However, the Ferrari is not quite up to snuff when it comes to those high-speed street tracks like the McLaren seems to be this year.
Yeah,
Max is just on another level. I don't know how he is wringing every ounce of synthetic petrol
wants to win
out of that.
He wants to win
RB, but he is just doing it. So I think it'll be a P1, P2, P1 for Lando, P2 for Max, and a P3 for Shaw.
Sweet.
But we'll find out.
Because last week our predictions were not right.
No, not even
but
close.
No one can blame us for that.
I don't even remember what my prediction was last year.
Yeah. Do we think Alpine was going to have 2 podiums?
No. Yeah. No, we were definitely wrong. No, we were 100% wrong. Well, a couple of amazing things happened on this episode. Number 1, Ben admitted that he was wrong, and I was right in regards to Alpine being
not afraid to admit it.
The middle of the pack. I admitted that I was wrong in saying that Kick will score a point this season. And looking at the last 3 races,
look at us.
I significantly think that it will not happen.
It's not going to happen.
And all we know is that we still love F1.
This weekend was just a gift, and we received it. Just incredible, unpredictable, reminds you why this is the best sport in the world kind of weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the F1 Rolling Start podcast. As always, we'll talk to you next time.
See you, folks.